Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
The regular season is over. 18 weeks of football are in the books. 32 teams started out on the road to Super Bowl LVIII. Now just 14 teams remain. What about the show? Well, we finished the season in some style. That's right, Week 18, the season finale, we were a perfect 3-0 against the line. It means the overall record for the season finishes in positive territory, 30-24, and it's even better if you take out the first 2 weeks. Remember that dreadful 1-5 start? Well, since week 3, the show's record against the line, 29-19. Impressive stuff. Can we continue to the postseason? Let's find out as we turn the page and look ahead to Super Wildcard Weekend in the NFL.
Graves on Gridiron with Richard Graves.
Well, welcome along to the show. This is Graves on Gridiron. I am your host, Richard Graves. The regular season finale had plenty of drama about it. The Jacksonville Jaguars at one point had an 8-3 record on the season. It got down to the final Sunday of the regular season. It was a win-and-in scenario for them at the Tennessee Titans. They couldn't get the job done. That opened the door to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They booted their way through that door to ensure they beat a depleted Baltimore Ravens team to claim the number 7 seed in the AFC in a wildcard playoff spot. And then the Buffalo Bills went into their Sunday night football game at the Miami Dolphins, knowing at worst they had a wildcard position. At best, if they won, they'd be the number 2 seed. Well, they got the win, albeit it wasn't straightforward with some turnovers from Josh Allen, but they found a way to get the job done. And a team who entered December knowing pretty much they needed to win out for the rest of the season did exactly that. They will now have at least 2 home games in the playoffs. That's if they're able to win, first of all, this weekend. What about the polls? They go up every Monday morning on my X account. This week, it was straightforward enough. With the playoff teams set for the postseason, it was a case of which team is the biggest threat to the number 1 seed in both the NFC and the AFC. Of course, the Baltimore Ravens are the number 1 seed in the AFC. And nearly 50% of you said that Buffalo Bills team that finished the regular season like a train, it was 49% in total, feel that they are the biggest threat to the Baltimore Ravens en route to appearing in Las Vegas, Nevada at Super Bowl LVIII. What about the NFC? Remember, the San Francisco 49ers have a bye week this week by virtue of being that number 1 seed. Well, 48% of you felt that it was the Dallas Cowboys, now the number 2 seed in the NFC, who are the biggest threat to the San Francisco 49ers, albeit given the fact that the 49ers have knocked the Cowboys out of the playoffs in each of the last 2 seasons. And do not forget, of course, when Super Bowl LVIII takes place next month in February, I will be there with the Graves on Gridiron podcast, bringing you regular, brand new podcasts every day of the week in the build-up to Super Bowl LVIII. It is an event like no other. 14 teams now are left in the NFL with an opportunity to join us in Las Vegas for the greatest show on earth, Super Bowl LVIII this February. There are 6 matchups this weekend, so let's move on and preview each of those games. We will start on Saturday. First up, an AFC encounter as the Cleveland Browns go to the Houston Texans. It's Super Wildcard Weekend, and this is what makes it so special. The Texans at the start of the season, who would have thought, led by a rookie head coach, led by a rookie quarterback, that they'd go on to not only win their division, but claim that number 4 seed and be in the postseason. And what about a Cleveland Browns team who've lost their franchise starting quarterback in Deshaun Watson? They have lost their starting running back, Nick Chubb, early in the regular season, inserted 38-year-old Joe Flacco, pretty much out of retirement because no one really expected to see him pull on an NFL jersey again. Well, he got off his sofa, straight into the starting lineup, and they have found a way to make it into the playoffs as well. These two have met already once during the regular season, only 3 weeks ago in fact. That was an entertaining game on that occasion. The Browns running out 37-20 winners at this venue, NRG Stadium. The stakes, though, have clearly been raised for this one. It's a win-or-go-home scenario for all the teams now. And it's two teams that come into it loose, full of confidence given the way they finished the season. The Cleveland Browns averaging 23 points per game. The Texans 22 points a game. Both have defenses which make plays on the ball, but it's Cleveland's which heads into the playoffs as the number one ranked defensive unit in the National Football League. Down the stretch, the Browns have given up at least 20 points in 4 of their last 5 games. That should be noted. Houston have been noticeably meaner and tighter, but the caliber of opposition, you can't say that's been in the same bracket as the Cleveland Browns. I'd expect this to be an entertaining affair through 2 quarterbacks at the opposite end of their careers, both, though, crucially, with a big point to prove. C.J. Stroud, the darling of the NFL, the rookie quarterback, number 2 overall pick at the outset, wowing observers every time he gets onto the field. Joe Flacco, he's been there, done it, bought the T-shirt. Of course, a Super Bowl MVP when he won it way back in 2013 with the Baltimore Ravens. He's still going to want to go out on a high. The Browns enter this game as 2.5-point favourites on the road. I think this is likely to be a closely fought, tense affair, as that mark would suggest, with nothing left on the field when it's all said and done. However, I do expect it to be an entertaining game. I think we're going to be seeing points aplenty, so I'm going to take the over mark on total points in this one. Over 44 points when the Browns and the Texans meet on Saturday night. Okay, game 2, Saturday Night Football, the Miami Dolphins against the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. Again, this is a matchup we saw during the regular season. It was designated a home game for the Chiefs, but of course it took place over here in Europe in Frankfurt, Germany. The Chiefs, unsurprisingly, 3-point favourites going into this game, home field advantage. But again, I'm going to look at the points line set for these two teams, which I find really interesting. You know, earlier this season, when these two teams did meet in Frankfurt, everyone thought Germany had landed the plum matchup. And while it might not have actually produced the fireworks that we anticipated in terms of scoring on the field, that 21-14 win for the Chiefs did give us a glimpse of what was to come, I feel. The Dolphins, remember, shut out the Kansas City Chiefs in the second half of that game. And the Chiefs largely shut down Tyreek Hill and this Miami Dolphins high-octane, high-powered offense as well. It started a trend that neither team, in all fairness, has really been able to shake in the remainder of the season. Sure, Miami have continued to put points on the board against weaker opponents, but look at their last 3 games of the regular season, all played against teams that are now in the playoffs. They haven't scored more than 22 in any of those 3 games. And to make matters worse, key players on offense now have question marks over their health, the likes of Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert at running back as well. And it's not any better on their defense, which for me is now significantly weaker, with star pass rusher, of course, Bradley Chubb, gone for the season with that torn Achilles he's picked up against the Baltimore Ravens a couple of weeks back. We heard from Mike McDaniel, the head coach, this week that star cornerback Xavier Howard, highly unlikely to feature in this one as well. These are key parts for this Miami Dolphins defense. I've got to say things aren't much better for the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs either, because although the Chiefs were afforded the luxury of being able to rest key starters for that final week of the regular season in LA when they beat the Chargers, you know, following that win in Germany, Patrick Mahomes stated they fixed the problems that they had on offense. It hasn't happened. They averaged just under 22 points a game on offense throughout the course of this entire season. In their last 6 games, they've managed to get more than 20 points only twice. And for this Chiefs team, that's flat out awful. And it is a problem when you're coming into win or go home scenarios such as this. Ultimately, this is a game which really does come down to who can win the turnover battle for me. As we saw on Christmas Day against the Raiders, if the Kansas City Chiefs turn the ball over, those mistakes are now costly for this team. Unlike in previous years, they frankly don't have the firepower anymore to overcome those sort of errors. Equally for the Miami Dolphins, whenever they come up against a playoff caliber opponent this season, scoring becomes an issue. Those 22 points they scored several weeks ago now against the Dallas Cowboys, the most they've scored against any team now taking part in the playoffs this season. That's phenomenal for what has been the number one ranked scoring offense all season. So I think it is understandable when you look at the line and the Dolphins come into it as 3.5-point underdogs. But I expect a low-scoring, tight game all round where 21 points, as we saw in Frankfurt, might just be enough to clinch your place in the divisional round weekend in the playoffs. Kansas City Chiefs have a line set on them just for them scoring 26 points in this game. It's set at 20.5 points. Sorry, I correct that, 25.5 points. I don't think they get up to 26 points in this game. Like I say, I think it's two struggling offensive units coming into this game. So I'm going to take the under there, take the Kansas City Chiefs, who may well win it, but with fewer than 26 points in this game. Okay, first two games previewed and in the bag. Still to come, 4 more playoff games previewed this weekend, including the Packers' trip to the Dallas Cowboys. And of course, it's Matthew Stafford versus Jared Goff, the two quarterbacks that switched teams a couple of years back as the LA Rams go to the Detroit Lions.
Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free news podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
Graves on Gridiron with Richard Graves.
Our first game on Sunday of Super Wildcard Weekend sees the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, no surprise to anyone, heavy favourites now. They've got home field advantage coming into this one. And it's easy to see why, because there is not a hotter team in the NFL right now than these Buffalo Bills. They entered December knowing they more than likely had to win out, just to have a chance of getting into the postseason and the playoffs. Well, not only did they win 5 straight games, but in the process of doing that, they knocked off the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium, followed by the Dallas Cowboys in back-to-back weeks, and then went into the home of their division rival, Miami Dolphins, on the final game of the entire season, Sunday Night Football, and they got the win there as well. And that's despite losing a couple of key players to injury in that game against Miami, and as a result of that, they are now the number 2 seeded team in the AFC. Contrast that with this weekend's opponents. The Steelers had a few breaks, it's fair to say, to get here into the postseason in that final week. First of all, they had to win the game themselves. Well, they got the win they needed against a Ravens team which rested pretty much all of their key players. They had nothing to play for. The number 1 seed was already sewn up. That meant that they needed the Tennessee Titans, 5 wins to their name all season. They needed them to go and upset the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, the Tennessee Titans did exactly that, as Derrick Henry had a game in what is probably his farewell game in a Titans jersey to knock the Jaguars out of playoff contention. That was enough to get them in, but it came at a huge cost for the Pittsburgh Steelers. TJ Watt, their star pass rusher, avoided an ACL injury in that game against Baltimore, but we're told he did damage his MCL, and that's likely at least a 2-week recovery time frame for him. Even if he does see action, he's not going to be anywhere near the TJ Watt that we've come to expect and is so important to the Steelers defense. It is a huge blow. He has 19 sacks to his name this season. That is a lot of production to be missing for a team which has the number 4 ranked offense. Sorry, a lot of production to be missing for when you're going against a team which has the number 4 ranked offense and averages 26.5 points per game this season. That team, of course, the Buffalo Bills. Potentially for me, a decisive blow to a defense which finished the regular season as number 6 when it came to scoring defense. They only give up 19 points a game, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The bottom line, though, is if the Steelers can't put pressure on quarterback Josh Allen, they will not win this game. They don't have enough firepower to live with the Buffalo Bills. Pittsburgh themselves only average 18 points a game on offense this year. Add into the equation as well that this game takes place in Buffalo. Not only do the Buffalo Bills win this game for me, they do it by scoring at least 25 points. And that's the line for this game. The Bills to score over or under 24. I think they do this in impressive fashion. Take the Buffalo Bills at over 24 points for this game.
Graves on Gridiron.
Next up, we go to Arlington, Texas, the home of the Dallas Cowboys, the number 2 seeded team in the NFC, and they host the Green Bay Packers. 2 teams meeting at AT&T Stadium that are steeped in history. 2 teams hitting the playoffs on a roll. 2 teams desperate to lift the Lombardi Trophy once again, but of course only one can progress. The last time these 2 met in the playoffs, it was a thriller at this very site. Tornado alerts were ringing outside the stadium. Fireworks were being let off pretty much literally as well as figuratively inside the stadium. Mike McCarthy came out on top, but on that occasion, he was the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. He's now the man on the sidelines in charge of the Dallas Cowboys. And make no mistake, it was for occasions such as this that Jerry Jones brought Mike McCarthy to Dallas. The Cowboys are coming off their 3rd straight season with 12 wins in that regular season. In the entire NFL, only the Kansas City Chiefs have recorded more regular season wins. They have 37 in total in the same period of time. But unlike the Chiefs, who've lifted the Lombardi Trophy, the Dallas Cowboys have only won once in the playoffs over the last 3 seasons. They haven't even made it to an NFC championship game. For the Green Bay Packers, remember, this was pretty much meant to be a rebuilding year for them, but Jordan Love has played superbly in his first year as starter at quarterback, and through December, they're back here in the postseason once again, and that's thanks to 3 straight wins to clinch that number 7 seed berth in the playoffs. Remember, they had to win last weekend against the Chicago Bears to ensure they'd be here. Pretty much a win or go home scenario for them. They got the win. They're here. They're playing against the Cowboys, a team they've got a pretty damn good record against in recent years as well when it comes to playoff football. However, worth bearing in mind, the Green Bay Packers have an average age of 25 years per player. That's the youngest average age and youngest average aged roster in the NFL this season. And while they enter the playoffs hot, it's worth noting who they beat over the closing weeks. Those last 3 games, wins came against the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Carolina Panthers. Prior to that, they lost back-to-back games at home against the Tampa Buccaneers and on the road to the New York Giants. If the Packers are to pull off the upset here on Sunday, then frankly, there's only one way they're going to do that. Commit to running the football. Since week 10, the Dallas Cowboys have been giving up 120 yards on the ground per game. In Aaron Jones, you have a running back that can carry the load. The Packers must commit to the run, control the clock, and play mistake-free football if they're to get the win here. If they don't, well, watch out because you're inviting trouble. The Dallas Cowboys are 16-0 when playing at home, AT&T Stadium, in a run going back all the way to September 2022. They average more than 37 points per game when playing at home this season. Dak Prescott has thrown more touchdown passes at 36 than anyone else in the NFL this year. They have a defense which has more quarterback pressures than any other team this year, and they take the ball away from opponents. They are an opportunistic defense. Green Bay can obviously point to their own defense, which only gives up an average of 20 points per game this season. And they can point to a road win on a big stage, big occasion, Thanksgiving Day in Detroit. However, the Lions turned the ball over on 3 occasions on Thanksgiving Day in that defeat, and they still tried to mount a rally and nearly came back. I don't think that's going to happen against this Dallas Cowboys team. They simply don't turn the ball over. They've only given the ball away on 16 occasions this year. Only the Houston Texans have given the ball away on fewer occasions. And I'm bound to say, if the Cowboys race into an early lead, I think the game plan for the Packers goes out the window. That's a scenario you do not want to be in if you're head coach Matt LaFleur or quarterback Jordan Love. It's a case where you're now having to go to the air and throw the ball. Well, that invites this impressive pass rush from the Cowboys. And as I say, they are an opportunistic defense. They do turn the ball over and take it away. It could get ugly if that's the case. So the key to the game here is the run game for the Green Bay Packers. If you run the ball, you control possession, keep the Cowboys offense off the field, then you have a chance. If it becomes a shootout, the Cowboys win this. I think it might well become a shootout in this game. They tend to be entertaining, explosive affairs. The Cowboys, heavy favorites at home going into it at minus 7.5 points. Not only do I think they win this game, I think they do it in a blowout. Take the Dallas Cowboys to cover at minus 7.5 points. Okay, still to come, we have the final 2 playoff games of Super Wildcard Weekend to preview, and a question. What on earth is going on with the Philadelphia Eagles?
Graves on Gridiron.
Okay, it's a big stage Sunday night football for the LA Rams and Detroit Lions. Remember, the Lions have to go all the way back to the 2014 season for the last time they were in the playoffs. That was one and done when they lost in somewhat controversial fashion to the Dallas Cowboys in Arlington, Texas. The Lions go into this game, though, as the number 3 seed in the NFC, and they are 3-point favorites. And what a year it's been for the Detroit Lions. It started, remember, way back, kickoff night, at the home of the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, Arrowhead Stadium. They took down the Kansas City Chiefs, and then they finished the season with a thumping win over the Minnesota Vikings to give them a 12-5 record. As I say, the number 3 seed in the NFC, but it's a 12-5 record that matches the best in the NFC, alongside the Cowboys and San Francisco 49ers. Quarterback Jared Goff has thrown for 4,575 yards this year. Align that with 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That's why you have a Lions offense that ranks in the top 5 of overall offense, passing offense, rushing offense, and in points scored, averaging a lick over 27 points per game this season. This will be the first time they've hosted an NFL playoff game at Ford Field. Understandably, then, they are 3-point favorites going into a game which will likely have a feverish atmosphere in front of a sellout crowd. And yet, I pause and hesitate because I think you need to tap the brakes. As good as their offense has been, I just feel that there's a fragility about this Lions defense. And I know their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, has been the subject of interview requests for some of the vacant head coaching positions that have sprung up over the last week in the NFL. But they do allow you to make plays on their secondary, and they keep you in the game. Look, they're great when it comes to defending the run. They're second best in the NFL at stopping opponents on the ground. But they rank 19th overall, 27th when it comes to defending the pass. And they're 23rd in points allowed, giving up 23 points per game. Middle of the road in turnovers, 17th in the NFL over the course of this season. And all of that is why I have cause for concern when you consider at who's coming into town. It's an LA Rams team which is coached by Sean McVay and quarterbacked by Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, who spent 11 years playing in Detroit. He knows this venue. He knows what it's all about. Remember, he was traded for by the Rams, who didn't feel Jared Goff was good enough, quite frankly, to get them over the line and win a Super Bowl. Well, it proved to be a good move for the Rams because Matthew Stafford did that for them in his very first season in LA. More than that, though, this is a Rams team which went into Baltimore not that long ago. The team with the best record in football at 13-3, 14-3, 13-4. I think that's right. Yeah, 13-4 in the end. They lost, didn't they, that final weekend, as I ponder the overall record of the Baltimore Ravens. But remember, the LA Rams went into the home of the Baltimore Ravens just several weeks ago, and it went all the way to overtime. And it was the Rams that ended up losing out in the end due to a punt return, a walk-off punt return, which got the Baltimore Ravens over the line. They have a pair of experienced, good wide receivers as well when it comes to Cooper Kupp alongside rookie Puka Nacua, who has been outstanding this season. And between them, they are a handful for the very best defensive backs in this league. We haven't even mentioned a defensive line for the Rams, which includes multiple defensive MVP Aaron Donald. This may well end up being a high-scoring affair. I don't think you're going to see either quarterback hold back in this one. But it's on stages such as this where experience counts. The Rams come into this game with a 10-7 record. That's why they're a wildcard team. But they are red hot. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. They're pretty healthy as well, and they're firing on all cylinders. This may turn out to be a year too early for the Detroit Lions. I like them. I like them a lot. They've been impressive throughout. But as I've said throughout, I just have reason to hesitate. They've achieved so much. Can they handle this stage when the spotlight shines the brightest and the stakes are so high? I'm not so sure. I like the Rams in this one. If the Lions are to win it, though, it could come down to a last-second field goal. If that's the case, I'm still taking the Rams all day long. 3-point underdogs. Give me the LA Rams to cover at +3. Okay, the final game of Super Wildcard Weekend, the Monday Night Football affair in Tampa, Florida, as the Philadelphia Eagles, once upon a time a 10-1 team, travel to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Eagles go into it as 2.5-point road favorites. Now, 2 years ago, the Philadelphia Eagles went to Tampa in the Super Wildcard round, and the Buccaneers had their way with them. The Bucs were heavy favourites going into that one, it has to be said. Now, I'm not going to say that this game will go the same way, but I will say this. It's only 3 weeks ago that barely anyone would have thought this realistically would have been one of the matchups this weekend. The bottom line is, a team that once sat proudly with the best record in football this season at 10-1 have now lost 5 of their last 6 games. They are banged up. They look bereft of confidence. Frankly, they look bereft of ideas when they're on the field. They appear to have lost their way. And it's not like the Tampa Buccaneers have been ripping up trees on their route to the postseason. I'll give you that. Their record is worse than the Eagles. But they are the NFC South champions. And what I've seen, certainly last week, in what wasn't a great game to watch, a 9-0 win at the Carolina Panthers, they're a team of fighters that are willing to scratch their way to get a victory. And I have the question, do the Philadelphia Eagles have that same desire, that same passion, that same tenacity? Because if they have, I certainly haven't seen it down the stretch in September. Now, quarterback Baker Mayfield has emerged as a real leader for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. He was clearly hurt last weekend. We knew he went into the game with a rib injury. Well, he limped off the field after pretty much every drive. And yet, he still found a way to keep this team going, at times against the odds, but he did just enough to get them over the line, get the win, get them into the wildcard spot. And the Bucs come into this matchup averaging just 20 points per game, which should tell you something about the way this team is set up. They have the worst rushing attack in football. Their defense ranks 29th when it comes to defending the pass. Frankly, these are statistics which give you little cause for confidence when you come into a win-or-go-home scenario. And yet, the Eagles have only won 1 of their last 6 games coming into the postseason. In that period, they too are only averaging 20 points a game on offense. They've allowed 30 points a game to opponents over that period. And there are real question marks over the health of their star players, even if they do suit up. The likes of Jalen Hurts, who we hear didn't break a finger on his throwing hand, albeit a fairly horrible-looking dislocation. Question marks over star wide receiver A.J. Brown, who left the game against the Giants with that knee injury. Question marks over Devontae Smith, who didn't even suit up in that game with an ankle injury. Their defense has looked awful through December. You know, where's Jalen Carter been? Where's Hassan Reddick been? They just haven't shown up when it mattered most, the business end of the season through the month of December. And lastly, and this is a statistic which I think is damning, no team in the history of the NFL has lost 5 or more games since the beginning of December and gone on to win a game in the playoffs. And I've got to tell you, folks, I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles change that here. The Buccaneers might come into it as 2.5-point underdogs. I just see more desire, more tenacity about them, and there are too many question marks over the Eagles right now. I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to cover here at plus 2.5. Okay, let's recap the 6 games taking place this weekend on Super Wildcard Weekend in the NFL. It starts first up in Houston, Texas. The Browns against the Texans. Total points in that game. Take the over at 44. Then on to the Miami Dolphins at the Kansas City Chiefs. Look at the line for the Kansas City Chiefs here. I think they win, but I don't think they score 26 points. Take the Chiefs at under 26 points on Saturday Night Football. Before we move on into Sunday, the Steelers at the Bills. The Bills, for me, are comfortable winners in this. Take the Bills to score more than 24 points in that game. Before you move to Dallas, Texas, the home of the Cowboys, and I think the road to the Super Bowl ends right here for the Green Bay Packers. Take the Cowboys to be impressive winners and cover at minus 7.5 points. Before we move on to Sunday Night Football, the Rams and the Lions. Matthew Stafford against Jared Goff. Take the Rams here to cover at plus 3. And then Super Wildcard Weekend finishes out in Tampa. Monday Night Football. The Buccaneers are 2.5-point favourites. I think they cover here. Take the Buccaneers at plus 2.5 points in that game. As always, remember, this is all about enjoying the football on offer, folks. Keep that in mind. If you want to read about the matchups we've discussed on this weekend's podcast, then go to my website, www.rdgmedia.uk. Click on the Talking Sport tab, and there you will see NFL Super Wildcard Weekend. You can read all about the 6 games we've looked at for this weekend. Equally, hit me up on X, at RichardGraves1. Remember, there'll be a poll posted on Tuesday this time, looking back at Super Wildcard Weekend. Have your say on that. Equally, Graves on Gridiron Facebook page is always open for business as well. We'll be posting thoughts and views on this week's games right there. Or Instagram, if that's your social media platform of choice. Trying to think here, RDG Media UK is the address we're looking for on Instagram. We got there in the end, folks. As always, it's great to break down these matchups with you guys, and I can't wait for the postseason now. Super Wildcard Weekend awaits us. 6 matchups, 14 teams now left on the road to Super Bowl LVIII in Las Vegas, Nevada. And remember, next weekend, the Baltimore Ravens and San Francisco 49ers join the party as well. It should be a humdinger of a weekend. Like I say, I simply cannot wait. I hope you feel the same way too. We'll be back next week previewing the next round of playoff games on the road to Las Vegas. But for now, it's so long, everybody.
Subscribe to Graves on Gridiron wherever you listen to podcasts. And keep up to date with the latest on Twitter. Search for Richard Graves 1. That's Richard Graves, the number 1.
Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free news podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.